Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel Read with Bindu. For today's video, I am going to do the entire plot summary of Powerless by Lauren Roberts. It's going to be filled with spoilers, so do not tell me that I haven't warned you. So quickly, what Powerless is about. This is about this kingdom, Elia, where it is divided into ordinaries and elites. Elites have the specific powers, specific kind of powers, and it is believed that whenever ordinaries are there, the powers of elites are going to be reduced or going to be distributed to the other people, so they will become powerless. Then comes our main character, Payden Grey, who is an ordinary in this kingdom. She is surviving this society as an ordinary. She fools other people and says that she is a psychic, she has psychic abilities. That's how she is surviving the world. And then we have our male lead, Kai Azar, who is the enforcer in this kingdom. So this kingdom, the king has two sons. One is Kit, the other is Kai. Kit is going to be the future son and Kai is going to be future enforcer. We will see about what enforcer means in a while. Without further ado, let's dive into the video. Okay, before talking about the book, if I'm constantly looking down because I have my notes right here and I've highlighted all the important quotes and dialogues that I want to talk about. So that's why. Okay, Powerless by Lauren Roberts. For every girl who has ever felt powerless. That's a pretty cute dedication, I will say. And then we have a map given also with the entire kingdom has this fort which is the central to the kingdom. And then we have Loot Alley from where our female character Payden is from. This is kind of like slums in the kingdom. And then we have something called as the Scotches, which is the desert area where the ordiners are banished into. And then we have the Shallows, which is like the sea area, which is the coastal area. Okay, if possible, I will put up the map here because it's very interesting. Okay, let's begin chapter 1 from the POV of our female character Payden. Thick, hot liquid runs down my arm. Blood. Funny, I don't remember the guard nicking me with his sword before my fist connected with his face. It literally starts with blood is flowing down my arm. Okay, I'll tell you, she is kind of a poor girl living in this Loot Alley, which is the slum area in this kingdom. So she is constantly trying to steal the food or steal whatever the necessaries that she wants. So in this particular situation, she is in a home, in a chimney. She has stolen sticky buns or honey buns from that house and she's trying to escape from the guards in this house, and she is literally in a chimney and she's trying to get out of the chimney along with the food and other things that she stole. I rip off a strip of cloth from the sweaty tank that clings to my body, dabbing at the gash with it. Edina is going to kill me for ruining her stitching again. Okay, this is the first mention we get of Edina. Edina is a girl who lives with Payden. She's like a sister to her. Like many years ago, while Edina was also a thief, she is also a poor girl in this loot who is an orphan. She doesn't have anyone. Payden also doesn't have anyone. That's how they get to know each other. When Edina was trying to steal something and gets caught, that's when Payden intervenes and rescues her, and from then they become inseparable. Edina is going to kill me for ruining her stitching again. I am surprised when I don't feel the familiar twinge of pain as I rub my arm with the rough fabric, and that's when I smell it honey. The same honey that belongs to the sticky buns oozing out of the many pockets in my ragged vest and dripping my own arm, mistaken for blood. I sigh, rolling my eyes at myself. Yeah, because she is mistaking the honey that is coming out of the sticky buns, the food that she has stolen, for blood, and she is like panicking. Why don't I feel a pain? Why I'm not feeling anything? My traitorous gaze sweeps across the city to where I know my former home lies, wedged between Merchant and Elm Streets, where a happy little family is likely sitting around the dinner table, laughing and discussing their day with one another. Okay, here we get to know that once upon a time, Payden used to have a house in the city. She used to live with her father, but for whatever reason now she is abandoned from this house. She is living in this slum area, and then she successfully gets out of this situation, stealing whatever she wants, and she gets to Edina. And then in the house, the owner is asking the guards, did you at least get a look at his face before you let him rob me again? Of course, they're going to assume that the thief is a man. And the guard says, all I saw were his eyes. The guard mumbles, blue, very blue. Okay, this is the first time ever we get the description of Payden's eyes. Very blue eyes. It is important, I'm telling you. I hop off the chimney and grab onto the raised ledge of the roof, swinging my legs over the side to dangle above the street. Okay, she's successfully out of the situation. She has successfully stole. I slipped down a smaller alley, making my way towards the dead end. There, tucked in the corner, in a mangled barricade of broken merchant carts, cardboard, old sheets, and plague knows what else. Before I'm even halfway to the pile of garbage we call home, a face obscured by wild shoulder length curls pops up over the fort. Did you get it? Okay, here we get the description of their house. They're literally living in a garbage pile, in a landfill. We get to see about the constant poverty that they're living in and the constant differences in the kingdom between the rich and the poor. And it's such an interesting topic which is even relevant in the society that we are living in. I think it will forever be relevant. It's never going to get old. Because poverty and hunger, such things which unfortunately are a sad reality and grim reality. So Edina asked her, did you get it? I sigh, I'm offended you doubted me, Edina. I thought you would have a little more faith in my abilities after all these years. She greedily claws the silk from my hands, running her fingers through the soft folds of fabric. So that's it. So along with the food, she has also stole some cloth or some fabric. So that's when we get to know that Edina is a seamstress. She tailors her own clothes. She loves stitching and designing clothes. Pay, you and your sticky fingers work magic, you know that. She throws her arms around my neck, pulling me into a crushing embrace that causes more honey to ooze down my vest and pull in my pockets. This is where we get to see the banter or the rambling between Edina and Paydon and the kind of sisterly or friendly nature between both of them, and it's so cute. And then Edina says, thank the plague you didn't get caught, Pay. As soon as the familiar phrase slips past her lips, my jaw sets instinctively, while hers fall open mid-bite. She visibly cringes, her brow crinkling and throat clearing. Sorry, bad habit. Okay, so in this kingdom, kind of how we say oh my god or something, they always say thank the plague. Plague knows. Plague is kind of their word here. But Paydon is very uncomfortable with that, obviously, because she is the ordinary. After the plague situation in this kingdom, that's when ordinaries and elites are divided. After the plague, people were given these powers and ordinaries are banished from the kingdom. So Paydon is not comfortable at all by talking about plague or anyone even mentions about the plague. She is literally haunted by the plague and even hunted, I must say, because she is an ordinary. And then we get to see a little bit of conversation between them, which shows that they care for each other, they only have each other. Just be careful, Pay, if you get caught and aren't able to take care of yourself out of it. I'll be fine, I stayed far too casually. This is what I do, what I've always done. So our Paydon Grey is a little thief. She has always done it since her childhood and she is so good at it. Over the next several decades following the plague, the ordinaries and elites lived in peace until King Edric decreed that ordinaries were no longer fit to live in his kingdom. It was over 3 decades ago when sickness swept through the land due to the outbreak of what was likely a common illness. The king's sealers used the opportunity to claim that ordinaries were carrying an undetectable disease. Okay, that's when it all started. After the plague, the king is like the elites have power, the ordinaries do not have powers, and they kind of have these healers who have this healing powers in this kingdom. They also spread this rumor like no, ordinaries should not be in the society along with us. They're just going to drain our powers and whatnot. My father believed that was bullshit and I think no differently. But even if I had proof that the king is lying, it's not as though a girl from the slums is in any position to be believed. And so began the purging. Oh my god. So this purging is literally ordinaries are either killed or they're banished into the Scorches. Many ordinaries have escaped from the wrath. They have either gone to the Scorches or the sea area. But whoever is left and whoever is found out by the kingdom, they are literally killed on the spot. Paydon kinds of thinks of her father and she gets nostalgic. Hide your feelings, hide your fear, and most importantly, hide behind your facade. No one can know Paddy. Trust no one and nothing but your instincts. My father's gentle voice is oddly jarring as it echoes in my head. And then we get to chapter 2 from our main character Kai's POV. A ball of fire comes past my face, nearly singeing off my hair. I barely have the time to duck when I feel a second wave of heat rippling towards me. Plagues, kids in a lovely mood today. What a way to start. Literally a ball of fire is going to attack him. So here we get introduced to two main characters, male leads, Kit and Kai, who are brothers. Like I said, one is the prince and the other is the enforcer. They are kind of training in this situation. They have this very wholesome dynamic between them. They love each other. They care about each other. They not only care at a personal level, also at a professional level. As a king and an enforcer, they know their responsibilities and I love their dynamic. They're kind of training and fighting in this situation, and that's when first we get to know about healers. They're like, see, we have so many bruises, we have to talk our palace healer and let him heal us. And then they fall into their usual banter. The smile he gives me doesn't quite reach his eyes when he finally says, Plague Sky, you're better with my powers than I am. And that is why you will be ruling the country, I say simply, while I'll be fighting on the battlefield, distracting the enemy with my dashing good looks. Okay, here we get to know what is the power of Kai. He can literally draw the power from other people. If someone who has a power is standing next to him, he can take their power and project it on himself. It's such a beautiful power and so dangerous also, I must say. And then here also we get to see that Kai is the future enforcer. He is going to fight the kingdom while Kit is going to be a prince or a king. Are you saying I couldn't distract the enemy with my dashing good looks? Kit asked with his deep laughter, feigning offense. I am saying that we are only half brothers, so I am afraid that means you only have half my charm. Kit barks out another laugh. By that logic, I suppose you only have half my brains then. Okay, here we get to know that they're only half brothers. It's almost comical how obvious it is that we are only half brothers. Other than our physical differences, I lack Kit's caring like he lacks my callousness. He is patient, personable, and fit for throne, like I'm fit for the battlefield, a king where I'm a killer. But you know what? The entire writing at multiple places, the same thing is happening. There is so many descriptions about these people, about their character. It's so much tell and not show. We can see about the situations where they're enacting or they're displaying all these characteristics, but we are just getting paragraphs and paragraphs of what they are and what they're not. My eyes stay through the figure strutting towards us, raining leathers clinging to her every curve and lilac hair whipping in the wind. Oh look, bitchy Blair, I breathe out under my breath before she reaches us, causing Kit to choke on a laugh. Hello boys, how is the training coming? Getting ready for the trials, Kai? So here we get to know about the trials, which are like Hunger Games like of situation going to happen. So every year these trials are going to happen where there are multiple stages of games where people are participated. So this year it's special because Kai, who is the future enforcer, the prince, is also going to participate. And then Kit and Kai visit the kitchen and then we get introduced to their famous cook or housemaid, you can say Gail. They have their usual banter with her. You two haven't visited me in a while, getting sick of me, You, yes, but never your food. So it's kind of cute that they have like kind of a motherly kind of figure in their life. And then chapter 3, we get from the Paedon's POV. I love books when they have multiple POVs, when we have POV from both male lead and female lead. So it's a brand new day. Paedon is a typical hunt to steal something to eat or to get to Edina. Here we get to see what her psychic powers are, how she's actually deceiving people, how she's thinking of constant instructions by her father, make them underestimate you, make them overlook you until you want to be seen. I stumble, scrambling to grab hold of the unsuspecting apprentice as I let myself fall. Gathering a fistful of his shirt in one hand, I slipped the other into his vest pocket where I saw him grab his coins. So there is this kind of guy who is going on the street and she kind of saw him grabbing some coins or putting some gold coins in his pocket. She wants to steal these coins. So she has stumbled herself upon him. But right as I'm about to pull out my hand and ramble an apology for nearly running the boy over, my fingers catch on the inside lining of his vest. No, not just the lining, a secret pocket. I feel a folded piece of parchment within. On an impulse I can't explain or justify, decide to palm that too before sliding my hand out and shyly looking up into the apprentice's face. So she just steals some of the gold coins. She doesn't steal all of them. She says like, greed is a bitch and whatnot. I don't want to be greedy and get caught. She knows herself. She is a pro at this point, what to do and what not to do. And along with the coins, for some reason, she grabs that paper also in the secret pocket. And now she is reading the paper. Meeting begins midnight. White House between Merchant and Elm. Bring the supplies. That's my house. Well, that was my house. So apparently whatever house is mentioned in this piece of paper, that used to be Paedon's house that we talked about in the first chapter. So she is very intrigued now. So after stealing, she is going on about her day and she kind of gets, she stumbles against an Imperial unpurposefully. Then we get to see Imperials are kind of like guards or people in power in this kingdom, you can say. So this is when we get to see the difference between mundanes and extraordinaries. Even with the elites or people with the powers, there is something called as mundanes who have like very lineal powers and extraordinary who have like very good powers. So the Imperial asks, sir, say, what's your power, girl? I fight the urge to stiffen as he continues with a grin. By decree of the king, I am to question anyone I feel should be questioned. I am a mundane, I say simply, stating my tire on the elite's food chain to prove that I am of little threat and importance to him, a psychic. Oh my god, what a way to put a lead's foot chain. Is that right? I've never met a psychic before. And this is a constant thing going to happen in this book. Everybody is going to be like, I've never met a psychic, I've never met a psychic. Apparently, nobody has met a psychic in this kingdom. I'm sensing anger and regret from you. You have just split up with your wife. Well, actually, she left you. You want her back, but she doesn't want you. So the Imperial asks Paden to read him, and she somehow puts up all the pieces together by just studying his body language. He doesn't have a ring on his usual hand. He has this on the other hand, but he's constantly messing with his ring finger. So she studies all these body language things which her father taught her, and she kind of gives whatever information she thinks is true. That turns out to be true, and the Imperial gets very angry. The thin tan line on his now empty ring finger was my first clue that he was formally married. Then there's the fact that he moved his wedding band to his other hand rather than pawning it off for money, telling me that he still cares for his ex-wife and is probably still pining over her. The disheveled hair, crumpled uniform and a smell of whiskey on his breath further proved that he's obviously a single man who no longer has a wife to make him look presentable. Okay, she kind of reads all the clues and comes to the conclusion. It's whatever. And then he slaps her because she tells the truth and she gets away from him. A large colored banner catches my eye as it begins to rise above the crowded alley strung between two shops by a crawler. The 6th purging trials is about to begin. Remember the purging, thank the plague, honor your kingdom, know your family and yourself. You could be the next victorious elite. This is how there is this banner about this trials in this entire kingdom. So the people are made to believe the entire purpose of this trials is to honor your kingdom and you yourself and then honor the power that you have. The part that has me shaking with both laughter and rage is that the lesser elites, those with defensive and mundane abilities, are made to believe that they have a chance of winning these twisted trials. Okay, so obviously the people who have the extraordinary powers, they have a very great advantage, but the kingdom keeps on letting the mundanes believe that they have the ability to win also. There have been very few times in my life when I haven't envied the elites, but at the thought of competing in the purging trials, I've never been more thankful to be nothing and no one of importance, completely ordinary. So she's like, only people with powers are going to be selected for the trials. I'm an ordinary, I'm a mundane, I'm not going to be selected for the trials, but God knows what's going to happen. Next, chapter 4 from the POV of Paden. She is going on about her day. We are going to get our first encounter between Kai and Paden. Everybody stay calm, it's going to happen.
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening! Everybody stay calm!
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Wait.
Everybody calm down!
I'm about to ready to head in early and call it a decently successful night when a tall figure, completely clad in black, strolls on to loot. He walks with an air of confidence, so at odds with the hunch that the homeless have adapted in the hopes of drawing as little attention to themselves as possible. But this man is making it difficult to look away. He wears a loose black button-down, tucked into slim black pants and separated by a simple belt. His collared shirt is halfway unbuttoned. His facial features are fuzzy from this distance, but his star black hair falls over the top of his forehead in messy waves. With his hands buried in his pockets, his long strides carry him deeper into the market, looking cool and collected. Swinging against his leg, attached from his belt with a strap, hangs a pouch that many aliens use to carry change. Of course, Paden's eyes fall on the pouch or the money purse that he's carrying. Specifically, the confident one, seeing that an unguarded pouch is easy pickings for a thief, easy pickings for me, my last unlucky target for the night. So she has targeted this particular boy and she wants to steal from him. Following my usual routine, I let myself stumble backward from the impact, fighting against every instinct screaming at me to plant my feet and stand my ground. Strong arms wrap around my waist to keep me from falling, leaving his money pouch open and exposed to lowlifes like me. I grab hold of the front of his shirt, acting as if I did so as a reflex to keep my balance. Really, I just needed a reason to have my hands so close to his body without looking suspicious. The starving boys from Loot don't feel like this. The thought dissolves when I reach my hand in the pouch at his hip, my fingers deducing that there are at least 20 shillings casually hanging from this man's belt. He must be very confident in his abilities to walk around Loot with so much loot. So she's obviously like, he's not from Loot because he's not skinny, he's not starving or anything, he looks very healthy. He has this entire big ass pouch which has so much of money, so many coins, so he's definitely not from here. So she quickly clutches some of the coins from his pouch. My eyes finally meet his. It's like looking into a storm. His eyes are the color of thunder clouds settling over Ilya, of smoke puffing from the chimneys overhead, of the stolen silver coins clenched in my fist. His black, long lashes are in total contrast with the steely grey eyes now sweeping across my face. Shock raises his dark brows, tightens his sharp jaw, emphasizes his strong cheekbones. We stand there staring each other. Okay, we get the entire description of the perfect features of Kai. You know what? I've seen so many beautiful fan arts of both Kai and Payden. I'm going to stick them here if I find them. His strong arms are still wrapped around my waist and half holding me up. Through his gaze feels like a caress in and out itself. His lips twitch, allowing me to glimpse a dimple in his right cheek. He slowly slides his arms from my waist, releasing me as his hands catch on the rough bottom of my vest. Calluses sees a fighter. So his famous dimples makes an appearance here. Do you always fall into the arms of a handsome stranger, or is this a new thing for you? His question displays the dimple again where a grin settles on his face, revealing white straight teeth. No, only the cocky ones. I smile coolly while he looks at me like I'm a puzzle he's trying to decipher, amusement playing all over his face. Well, looks like I've made quite the first impression then. So they kind of slowly fall into a banter. He shrugs, shoving his hands into his pockets. The perfect picture of cool indifference. I caught you, didn't I? Now it's my turn to laugh. Leaning in, he adds, maybe you should consider that detail before you decide, darling. Plagues, a pretty boy with pretty words. Dangerous.
Wow! Very dangerous!
So eventually she gets away from him somehow and she moves away from that situation. We get the next chapter, chapter 5 from Kai's POV. He gets back to his palace, to his king, and then we get the first encounter of the king or his father. Good, you put on his shirt, he sighs, but I see a slight smile in his eyes. I consider telling the servant to add the detail to the message he gave you. Oh, don't worry, father. I won't make the mistake of showing up to the throne room without a shirt again. Why? He clears his throat along with any emotion on his face, and there's the father I'm so used to. I have a mission for you as the future enforcer. I live to serve, I answer flatly. I live to kill. My informants know of a family harboring an ordinary near Loot Alley. Father continues, I need you to investigate and eradicate the problem. Eradicate equals execute. So this is when we get to know what the actual work of enforcer is. He needs to hunt whoever ordinary people are there in the kingdom and he needs to kill them. And Kai is just a teenager. I think he's 18 or something, and it's such a big burden for a teenager to have. Like, dude, why would you make your own son do that? And then he talks a little bit about his training, his relation with his father, how brutal he is. If you cannot endure suffering, you are unfit to dole it out, enforcer. So eventually Kai reaches to this loot area where this ordinary family, supposedly ordinary family, is surviving. He goes to them and he do not find any ordinary. All the people are elites only. So he asks them, he's like, there are 4 people in the house, but then he notices that there are 5 balls. So he thoroughly searches the house and he kind of finds a secret room on the floor. The floor creaks and he opens it. Some hinges are there. And then he finds a little girl inside that floor who is an ordinary. She can't be more than 8 years old. Plague, she's so young. But the girl doesn't fight me as I reach down and lift her out of the damn box. I set her on the floor where she stares defiantly up at me, not a trace of fear on her small face splattered with freckles. It's just so sad that even children or kids are bound for this wrath. So we get to know that the girl's name is Abigail. She has been living with this family for a few years. They beg him, they ask him not to do anything to her, that she is their everything. That's when we get to know that Kai actually has some morals. He doesn't kill children, he kills other people. But he draws the line there, he doesn't want to kill the children. So he banishes this family to the Scotches. The father of the family asks him why are you sparing us, and he says, I don't kill children. Hypocrite. Yes, but it's a sad situation. And then we get to the next chapter, chapter 6 from Kai's POV only. After banishing the family to the Scotches, it's nearby to the Loot Alley. He is wandering in the Loot Alley. He wants to get back to his palace, and that's when this entire interaction which is studied in the previous chapter from Payden's POV is happening. That's when he comes across Payden. But you know what? The entire situation, the entire conversation is repeated again. I don't know why. Almost every single chapter is like that. One chapter we get from Payden's POV. The same situation is repeated we get from Kai's POV. Every single thing. Even dialogues are repeated at certain points. Why? It's just waste of pages, I think. And then after we get a repeat of the entire situation, we get to see that there is one particular man who is kind of having a fight with Kai, and Kai is unable to access his powers. That's when he realized that the other guy is a silencer. We get to know that silencer is someone who has the power to literally silence the other people's powers. He can dumb down or entirely let go of other people's powers, so other people won't be able to do anything or won't be able to access their powers when a silencer is acting on them. So Kai is like, I'm unable to do anything, I'm feeling so sick, my head is hurting. I blink away the blurriness long enough to see something glint in the light behind the silencer, the sun reflecting off a mass of silver hair. That's when we get to know that Paden has silver hair and she gets her infamous name, the Silver Savior. Next we have chapter 7 from Paden's POV. I stopped suddenly, eyeing a small crowd gathered farther down the street. Must be a whale. She's like, after robbing Kai, she's going to her home and she has seen all this commotion happening. And she goes to see what's happening. When I raise my eyes to the scene before me, I gasped, cupping a hand to my mouth. It's him. I saw him less than 10 minutes ago, and yet his shirt now clings to his sweat as he prepares to strike the man pinned beneath him with a flaming fist. And then she is like, he's clearly struggling. Why is no one helping him? I am going to step up. Here goes nothing. I draw up to my full height right behind him and silently raise the rock, intending to connect it with his skull. So she eventually fights off the silencer. Kai is able to get out of his grip, and then people are kind of having hushed conversations about what's happening. Silencer here in Ilya. It's Prince Kai who fought off 4 men, fought the silencer without using a power. And that's when it hits Paden. She's like, what? What did you just say, Prince Kai? Did you just say Prince Kai?
What did he say?
I have never seen the man, never thought I would. Never thought I would steal from him either, but I've heard enough about his reputation, how he is supposedly the strongest elite in decades, how he is the future enforcer, said to be callous and calculating, yet charismatic and charming when he wishes to be, when he chooses to play the part. She's like, oh shit, what have I done? Did I just literally steal from the prince and the future enforcer of the kingdom, who is hunting the ordinaries like me? His eyes find mine. Even with his countless injuries, he strides towards me, pushing the limb from his walk, a predator stalking its prey. I try to slip into the crowd, no such luck. A callous hand grips my arm before spinning me around to pin me against the alley wall. He presses both my wrists against the brick with strong hands before leaning in towards me. I huff in irritation. Is this how you treat all the people who save your life, or is this a new thing for you? I wouldn't know, seeing that no one has ever saved me before. And then Paden says, well, let me enlighten you, thank you. Thank you will suffice. Maybe he sighs and leans in closer, but not for those he stole from me. And that's when she realizes, oh no, he knows. He knows that I stole from him. I am dead as the plague. I think my heart stops beating. The prince knows I stole from him. The prince, the future enforcer, the deliverer of death. I am dead as the plague. And then she's like, whatever, dude. She gets so cocky and reckless. So he's pretty and has a brain. You know, you might make a good thief if it weren't for the fact that you were so easily fooled by one. You do realize who you're talking to, right? A cocky bastard. That's when the name comes from. She calls him cocky bastard. It's a recurring name. It's a recurring nickname she has for him. It's so cute. He's like, I've been called worse, whatever. Despite you robbing me, I suppose I should thank you for your help. He should, because she literally saved his ass from dying. And he's like, okay, I am kind of skeptical now. Why didn't the silencer silence you if you are an elite? And she's like, oh shit, I don't have a power. I have to prove him now. And she's like, I'm a psychic. And he's like, prove it to me. He's like, I've never met a psychic before. Call me curious again. Kai also hasn't seen a psychic. Nobody in this kingdom has seen a psychic, for God's sake. And he's like, prove it to me. Read me, or whatever it is you say you do. Impress me, darling. She's like, may I see your hand? May I see your hand? Is there a reason you insist on holding my hand? My gaze snaps up to his cool one. Don't worry, I will try to resist kissing your knuckles, Prince. Okay, we have fallen. The banter has started. The entire book is filled with this banter. There is literally pages and pages of this endless banter. It's so cute, but it has to stop at some point and the plot has to begin, right? But apparently not. So she studies him, she looks at his body language, she looks at his hands, at his shoes, they're filled with sand, and she's like, oh, Scotches is filled with sand. So maybe he recently went to the Scotches and he seems very guilt-driven, so maybe he has vanished. He has banished someone into the Scotches, maybe ordinary family, and is not feeling happy about it. She talks about all those things, and Kai is impressed, honestly. And he's like, I should thank you again for helping me, darling. Payden. His dark brows raised slightly in question. My name is Payden, not darling. Payden, he echoes with a small smile, testing out the word. His deep voice makes my name sound so rich, so regal, as if I am the one with royal blood pumping through my veins. Girl is already so lost for him. Oh, and darling, Payden, you were right. He takes another step backward. I'm not sure I should ever listen to what you are about to say since you didn't address me by my name, which is Payden. The ladies do love me. And with a wink, he turns and strides out the alleyway. He is so cocky and full of himself. And then we get chapter 8 from Payden's POV. She gets to Edina and she talks about all that has happened, all the commotion and how she saved the prince. And then the next day she gets into the alley and everybody is like looking at her and talking about her and whispering like, oh, this is the girl who saved the prince and this is the girl and whatnot. And she's like, oh my god, this is my worst day ever. This is my worst nightmare coming true. Because she is a thief, she just wants to be hidden in the background. And now everyone is noticing her. The Silver Savior, I hear a man whisper before others echo his words. The people of Ilia have chosen introducing your contestants for the 6th ever purging trials. And then there is a list of all the names are the people participating in this trial. And end of the list, they have Payden Grey. Oh my god. Our worst nightmare is actually coming true. Chapter 9 from Kai's POV, we get to see that he is torturing the silencer who has actually attacked him. He tries to get answers from him but he doesn't say anything, so eventually he kills him. We get to see a little bit about his methods and then he talks about the incident which happens in the loot, how Payden saved him. And the entire scene is repeated, even some of the dialogues are repeated. I'm not even kidding. Half of this book is repetition and it's so annoying. And then Kai goes to the king. The king says, is that damn resistant, the silencer belongs to the resistance. This is when we get to see the first mention of the resistance, who are this group of ordinary people who do not have any powers, who are trying to fight against the king, who are trying to find their place in this kingdom rightfully. And then he gets into his routine training with his brother Kit and he is kind of distracted because of someone. Can't stop thinking about the girl who saved your life, huh? Now what would you give that impression? I shrugged casually. She clearly wants nothing to do with me. And besides, it's not like I'm ever going to see her again. Here we get introduced to their baby brother Chax, who is only 15. Actually, in a shipwreck that they went on, they find about this boy who has lost his parents. And they adopt this boy and since then they have been inseparable. Jax is so cute in this entire book. And then they also have the bitchy Blair from the previous chapter and Sadie, who is also kind of like their family friend who is training in the palace. And then we get to see the powers of Sadie, who is the cloner. Apparently she can make multiple different copies of herself. So whoever is watching do not know who is the actual Sadie and who is the clone. That's like such a dangerous power. So that's when they're going through the list and Kai looks at the list and he's like, Jax is also part of the list and he's like, why? My 15-year-old brother is in the trials now. I not only have to take care of myself, I have to take care of him also. And then he looks at the end of the list. I care to admit it's her. He looks at the name of Payden Grey. Chapter 10 from Payden's POV. Imperial comes to her and he's like, are you Payden? We have to take you to the kingdom. The king wants to know. They're like, even before the trials begin, we have to give you certain training at the palace. So all the people who are selected for the trials need to go. So she goes to Edina and she's like all sad and all. Edina says, come home to me, Pay. Please, you are all I have left, you know. And then Payden says, you are my favorite A and you are mine, Pay. They just have each other. They don't have anyone else. Next, chapter 11 from Payden's POV. She is taken by an Imperial from the loot and taken to the palace. She talks about all the differences or the disparities between the loot alley and the palace area. She talks about the kind of discrimination or the hunger and poverty existing in the loot and the kind of excessive things in the palace or the main kingdom area. We are introduced the character Lenny, who is an Imperial who is responsible to take care of Payden until the trials begin. So there are 2 weeks until the trials begin and there will be so many practice sessions, training sessions, balls and whatnot. She is given an own room of herself, an enormous bed, hot water and whatnot. This is when she first encounters with Kit. But she doesn't know he is the prince and she is like running her usual mouth. And he is like, I'm Kit, by the way. Prince Kit, as in the future king of Ilya. Kit, what is it with me running into royals? And they kind of organize a dinner for all these people participating in the trial. She is the last one to go, of course, and they're introducing each other. And then Kai is like, I'm Kai, but you already knew that. Chapter 12, we get from Kai's POV. She's here again, a little bit of repetition of whatever has happened in the previous chapter. The king and the queen walks into the dinner room, and we get to see the king is kind of skeptical about Paden because she's like a mundane and whatnot. He doesn't know that she's an ordinary, but he suspects. After the dinner is over, Kai to Paden is like, I will escort you to your room. And she's like, why the sudden urge to be a gentleman? She calls Riley from behind. Don't get used to it, I say with a quick smirk. My room just happens to be across from yours. And why would a prince be staying in the contestants' wing of the palace? Well, in case you haven't noticed, I too am a contestant in the trials. So apparently it doesn't matter if it's a prince or an enforcer or anything. Every contestant is treated equally before the trials. And they're having their usual banter and they kind of fall into this fighting rhythm. She has a knife to his throat and he kind of observes the scars on his cheek. Remember that the Imperial has slapped her in the loot alley. And he asks her, who did this to you kind of moment. And she's like, you are Imperial. One of your Imperials has done it. And he keeps it in his mind. He's like, okay, let me remember that for later. Chapter 13, from Paden's POV, we get to see a little bit of training. She's like, oh my god, I'm not used to this at all. My body is sore. My entire mind is screaming to stop. And then when she is training, someone literally just throws a knife at her and she ducks. And she sees that it's Kai who was actually threw the knife. Not just he threw the knife, he's like, good reflexes, Grey. What the hell is wrong with you? I stormed towards Kai, closing the distance between us in a matter of seconds. What if I didn't duck, huh? Then I wouldn't have less competition to worry about. So you are admitting that I'm a threat to you? I've never said that, but you implied it. Don't flatter yourself. I knew you would duck, Grey. How? How do you know, dude? What if she didn't? She would be dead by now. And then while they're talking, Blair gets jealous and she throws a knife at her. It kind of grazes across her ear, and if you remember, she has silver hair and it gets all bloody, and Kai is like, oh, your hair is getting all messy and bloody, let me take care of it, let me clean it, let me braid it. It's such a cute moment. Chapter 14, from Paden's POV, we get to see that before the trials we have these interviews kind of situations where every single person showcase their abilities to the people in the kingdom. If you remember, in the Hunger Games also, we have these contestants. We have the interviews with all the contestants in front of all the capital people. Same situation is happening here. And like nothing is simple in this kingdom. Even to reach those interviews, they have kind of this entire obstacle course that they need to get through in order to reach the interview stage. I'm like, what? And that too, every single woman has a disadvantage because they're wearing a dress to impress the people. And then we get to see this is not ordinary trials. For the first time in Purging Trials history, we have a future enforcer competing. I don't know why they keep on calling him future enforcer. Kai is literally doing the job of enforcer right now. Why isn't he the enforcer? If he is the future enforcer, who is the current enforcer? We never get to see who is the current enforcer and why are we calling future enforcer? Why are we calling Kai as future enforcer? And also, he is participating in the trials. What if he gets killed in the trials? What happens to the post of enforcer? Do we have some other backup who gets to fill his post? So many questions that never gets answered. And then the interviews are happening. We get to see the powers of every single person. First up, we have Jax. He says that he is a blink. It means he can teleport to any other place in a blink. He showcases his power and impresses the audience. And next we have Braxton, who is also a participant. He is an illusionist. He can cast so many illusions that other people will think are real. And then Sadie, we also know, who is a cloner. And then Blair, whose power is telekinesis. And Hera, who just vanishes. Along with her, the person sitting beside her also vanishes. So that's her power apparently. I don't know what. And then we have Andy, who transforms into a tiger, then a falcon, a wolf. All of them same wine color of her hair. She is a shapeshifter. She can transform into any animal she wants. And then finally we have Paden Grey. So chapter 15, from Paden's POV, in her interview, she is asked what's her power is and how psychic power works. And she randomly calls a bunch of people from the audience and she reads them what she is best at. And everyone is very impressed actually. We have a next chapter, 16, from Kai's POV. The entire chapter, nothing is happening honestly. We just get to see a bunch of training, the normal training, and Kai is kind of giving instructions to Paden, letting her know that her form is not good and whatnot. Just the usual. Next, chapter 17 from Kai's POV again. This time, reverse Uno, Paden throws a knife at Kai and he's like, what if I didn't duck, Grey? I knew you would duck, Azir. You don't really want to do this and neither do I. Especially because I wouldn't want to mess up that pretty face of yours, darling. She all but rolls her eyes at me. That's funny because I won't hesitate to mess up your pretty face. I smirk. I knew you thought I was pretty. Oh my god, he's so full of himself. He's such a shameless flirt. I don't know what is to say. He's just a flirt. And then they say, let's fight each other and let's try to see who is the better one. And he's like, you know, I do have 8 powers at my disposal right now. She says, I don't want to fight with your power. I want to fight you, just you. He's like, so you just want me? No powers? Yes, I just want you. My mouth twists into a crooked grin. I knew you wanted me, Grey. And with that little comment, a little high kick comes flying towards my face. Oh my god, Kai, he is a flirt. I cannot with him. I cannot. 1 minute we are flirting and the next we are fighting, possibly even both at the same time. I can't seem to figure this vicious girl out. So he's like, oh, let me go easy on her because I don't want to hurt her so bad. But she's like, she is full on going at him. She is messing him up. She is kicking the punches, throwing them and whatnot. So she beats him up and she is like, I know you went easy on me and I don't want you to go easy on me ever again. And then they fall into their usual banter. She's like, you should see the damage I did to your pretty face. My lips quirk into a smile as I lift my head towards her. Oh darling, as long as you still think I'm pretty, I don't give a damn what I look like. This boy! Chapter 18 from Paden's POV. So she again comes across Kit and she looks at his eyes. He has green eyes just like his father, the king. And she has such mixed feelings towards Kit actually because she hates the king for whatever reason. We get to know about that in the future chapters. So since both of them has the same green eyes, whenever she looks at Kit, she's like, Kit is a nice person, but I cannot look past the resemblance he has to his father. So she kind of has this mixed feelings towards him. Okay, I literally wrote in my notes, good personality but bad eyes. Oh god. So they're again back to their training. Kai comes there, he's like, something making you nervous, Grey? And what would you give the impression that I'm nervous? He hums, running a hand over his rough jaw. Should I start with the fact that you're spinning that ring or the more obvious one being that you're clutching a knife? So he's literally observing every single detail of her. And then after the training session, Kit is the one this time. He's like, oh, Paden, I want to walk you back to your room. And then they kind of talk to each other a little bit and Paden realizes maybe Kit is kind of attracted to her. There is a ball going to happen where all these contestants have to pair up with the other person with a partner and they have to dance. Kit actually asks Paden that he wants to be her dance partner and she agrees. And when they're discussing about this ball, the house help of Paden is like, oh, we have to make a dress for you. And that's when it clicks Paden. She's like, how can I forget? I forgot Edina. How, girl? Why would you forget Edina? How? I still don't understand. I've completed the book. I've completed the entire series and I still don't get this moment. Why? How could she forget the only person in her entire life who means so much to her? Then she is like, I know a seamstress. I lived with one and then it hits me. I forgot Edina. She's so guilt-ridden. So she's like, oh, I know this person in the loot who makes very good dresses. We can get her here. So again, back to training. New day, same old routine. Kai's gaze drops to the dagger in my hand. Do you plan on pressing that to my throat again? Don't tempt me. Here for a rematch? What do you want, Azir? Mr. Too Grey? I'm here for your lesson. He's like, see, your form is very bad. I have to teach you. I'm here to teach you a lesson. You are psychic. Did you not see this was coming? That is funny. So he's like, I'm going to give you dance lessons. I know you're going to dance with my brother Kit. He's a very good dancer, but you're not. So I'm going to teach you so that you do not embarrass my brother. So they kind of have this cute moment where they're playing music and dancing together. Kai is teaching her some cute steps. And then they kind of talk about the feelings a little bit. She asks him, do you wish it was you, the king, the future king of Ilya, the heir? And he says no. He just says no. He doesn't give any explanation or anything. And then Edina finally comes to the palace as the seamstress of Paden. She is about to make a dress for Paden. So here we get to see the color of this kingdom is emerald green. So most of all the contestants in every single trial, every single year, they wear green color dresses. But Edina is like, I actually have a different color in mind for you. They are going to make Payden a different color dress because she is not like other girls. Chapter 20 from Kai's POV, he is telling about the descriptions of the ball, about the people, the sea of black. Everyone is wearing the suits, and we get to see every single woman in the ball is wearing green color dress except for our Payden, who is the silver savior. So to be different, she is wearing a silver fabric, a silver gown, a very eloquent gown, and there strapped to her thigh is a silver dagger for all to see. Okay, so the women aren't necessarily required to wear green to these balls, and it seems Payden took advantage of that little detail. She definitely did. So Ketchup is dance partner of Payden and they're talking to each other. Kai is shamelessly looking at them. He is completely jealous. He doesn't care if anyone is looking at them or not. And then Kit and Payden starts dancing and Kai just cannot take it. He is pining so much. He is literally burning inside. What the hell is wrong with me? I catch her watching me and her eyes lock. Sparks dancing between us. She's the embodiment of a bad decision, the twin of danger and desire, the fine line between deadly and divine, and I can feel myself drowning. He's so lost. Chapter 21 from Payden's POV. So while she's dancing with Kit, Kai comes suddenly in between. I'll be stealing her now. But then again, he is the prince, the next enforcer, a cocky bastard. We fit together perfectly, pieces of puzzle snapping into place. I shouldn't let myself relax into his touch. So Kai and Payden starts dancing. They fall into the usual banter. That's when the resistance breaks out. So there are so many people with this mysterious mask attacking the ball. And Kai is like, Payden, just get to safety. And he asks Kit to get away from here. Then we get to say that Kit is like, I want to fight. I am the king. I don't want to get away from the problems. I want to actually take part in the battle. And Kai is like, are you mad, dude? I'm the enforcer. That's my purpose. I'm literally here for you to do that. You're the king. If something happens to you, the entire kingdom is going to be at jeopardy. But Kit doesn't understand this simple logic for some reason. He is like, he has his own FOMO and he wants to fight every single battle. Dude, you are the king. People are relying upon you. What if you die? Who is going to take care of the kingdom? But eventually he gives in and they go to the safety. Next, chapter 22, we get from Payden's POV. Kit explains to Payden a little bit about resistance, who those people are and what are they doing. She gets to know a little bit about the resistance, about the people, ordinary people, that there are many more people just like her in the kingdom. And then the fight is over. They all get to their own places. And then Payden gets across Kai. She's like, what happened? Where are you hurt? And where are those damn healers? So Kai is apparently hurt and she's so worried. Ah, great. Just the person I wanted to see. He grinds out the words through the gritted teeth, though he's still acting like his cool, collected self. Before we get to that, did a healer get to you? Oh my god. He is the one filled with bruises and cuts and whatnot and is worried about whether a healer got to her. Where do we find men like this in real life? And here I was thinking you hated me and my stupid dimples, and touched you cared so much about my well-being, Grey. Even while in obvious pain, he still finds a way to smirk along with being a total ass. Oh, don't mistake my motives, Prince. I only want to keep you alive long enough so I can punch that smirk off your face again. I gasp, what the hell is wrong with you? That is a very loaded question. Hard relate, lol. She's like, you literally have a knife on your back and you're just talking to me, dude. What's wrong with you? And he's like, oh, but the sound of your voice was such a welcome distraction from the pain. Dude, you are a shameless flirt. Get over yourself. And she's like, yeah, well, now you get to hear me telling you that you are a complete idiot. That's still one of the nicer things you've said to me, so I'll take it. He says smoothly, seemingly undisturbed by the piece of metal impaling his body. I can't even imagine what pain he's been through to make this wound seem so bearable. Okay, I say slowly, tell me what to do. You say that like you'll actually listen to me for once. Kai, I'm about to draw another knife to your back if you don't. I just need you to pull it out. And then Kai says, do me a favor, darling. And what's that? Promise me you will stay alive long enough to stab me in the back. I laugh loudly. That's been my goal all along, Prince. Chapter 23 from Kai's POV. I nearly swallow a mouthful of damp dirt. My eyes flutter open and I cough into wet soil beneath me. Please, where am I? So apparently in their sleep, these people are just thrown into this forest and the first stage of the trials has begun. And then he spots a sight. Sight is this people with this power who takes pictures or who takes videos of this entire scene happening and they can project this scene to other people to see later. Why don't they just have normal cameras like normal people? I don't understand, because they seem to have technology, then why not just have cameras? So, and then he finds a piece of paper in his pocket. Welcome to the first trial. In the whispers you will be. We hope you stay a while in this game of honor and dignity. The goal of this game is quite clear, and for the winner we will cheer. Become victorious by collecting the bands, the ones that rest high above your opponent's hands. Collect from those who have been banded, and be warned, if you return empty-handed, if you wish to win, you must have the most. So basically, some of the people have been some kind of band on these arms, and some of them do not have, so they have to collect bands from other people. Whoever has the highest bands, they will be like winner of the stage of the trials. And he's thinking like, I need to find water first and then opponent second. Smart boy, that's a smart move, because it's very likely that people are going to die of dehydration rather than these fights. So hours, long tiresome hours of trekking through foliage later, he is searching for water, and then my thoughts around her stop. He literally, just so many hours are happening, he doesn't come across anyone, nothing is happening. It's just so boring. And then after a long night, he comes across Brax, who wants to take the brand from Kai. They kind of has a fight, but obviously Kai wins the fight, but he is severely injured. Next, chapter 24 from Payden's POV. Again, Payden is in search of water, on food. Nothing is happening for a long time, for many hours. She says, I walk and walk, I'm bored during a bloody trial. That's right, she is bored and I am bored too. Honestly, nothing is happening. Everyone is bored. And then finally she comes across Ace, another contestant who is an illusionist. He makes her see so many illusions that she is traumatized with. Eventually she wins also, but she is also severely injured, just like Kai. Chapter 25 from Payden's POV. She is very seriously injured. She is very dehydrated and she has one goal in her mind. She wants to get to the water. That's when she comes across Kai. You just can't seem to stay away from me, can you, Grey? I heart hammering. Leave or I shoot. My arm is beginning to tremble with the effort and pain of keeping the bow trained on him. Good to see you too, Grey. You think I'm kidding? How cute. What? That's it? You're just going to shoot me? Where's the fun in that? Or it will be fun for me, I assure you. And then she suddenly gets very dizzy and he's like, Payden, hey, Pay, look at me. Pay, stay with me. Pay, just don't die on me. And she's like, you have never called me that before. You have never called me Pay before. Like, girl, you're dying. Focus on yourself, not what is calling you. Delirious, I'm so very delirious. Yes, you are. And Kai says, remind me to make you smile like that again when you aren't dying and I have all the time in the world to memorize it. Boy, he has such a way with his words. He can make anyone melt, I'm telling you. And he's like, Payden, open your voice. If you die, I'm going to kill you. The typical, if you die, I'm going to kill you. And then chapter 26 from Kai's POV, we get to see him worrying about her. We get to see him trying to heal her. He's searching for all the things. He's searching for something in order to heal Payden. And in his bag, he kind of finds his potion/ointment and he treats her and she's fine. She's fine, guys. She's not dying. And he's like, why don't I ask the questions? Which one of them did this to you? We get our who did this to you moment, the typical. It doesn't matter. I'm going to ask again, who did this to you? Why do you care? Then she's laughing bitterly, the sound vibrating under my fingers, because I don't tolerate my toys being played with. She gets very angry. She's like, some toy you can play with? That's what you think of me? And they're like, no, I'm just kidding. I don't actually mean it. I'm just messing with you. Why? And they talk a little bit about each of their lives. He asks about her life in loot and she asks about his life as an enforcer, and they're just having a conversation. Chapter 27 from Payden's POV. So both Kai and Payden, they strike a deal. They're like, let's work together because we are better as a team rather than as an individual person. She's like, okay, whatever, I'm going to survive anyways. So they kind of fall into their usual banter. You know, I mutter, examining the bite closely. I'm beginning to think that you enjoy getting hurt, if only so you can have my hands all over you. Payden is saying this. He lets out a low laugh. I can practically feel his gaze gliding over me as he says, oh, I'm not making you do anything, darling. You can leave me to bleed out if you must. because I only want your hands all over me if you want them to be. Flirt. Shameless flirt. Flirt alert. And then chapter 28 from Kai POV. It's been 3 days since a wolf took out a bite out of me. 3 days? Nothing for 3 days? They're in literal trials and nothing has happened for 3 days. That's how boring it is. I'm not even kidding. Since nothing is happening, they think let's entertain ourselves. Kai is like, okay, we didn't get to finish our dance the other day because of the rebels and the resistance, so let's do it now. She's like, there's no music, how will we even dance? Then he's like, well then I guess we won't know when to stop dancing. How unfortunate. Don't tempt me to stomp your toes. And he's like, oh, we can't have that. I'm still recovering from the last time we danced. So they're talking a little bit and Kai is like, darling, I doubt that the sight of someone dying would affect me as much as you do alive and well. She swallows. You are a shameless flirt, Azir. Only for you. Now it seems you're also a shameless liar. And then suddenly out of the blue, she just asks him, what's your favorite color? My eye snaps to hers. What? I nearly choke on my laughter. Your favorite color? What is it? For once, I almost step on her toes out of shock and sheer wonder. Of all the things you could ask me, you ask what my favorite color is. She's like, whatever, dude, you have a favorite color or not, just tell me. I never thought about what my favorite color was before. It never seemed important. Not until I looked into a pair of ocean blue eyes and realized that perhaps drowning was a beautiful thing. Not until I looked into a pair of fairy blue eyes and realized that perhaps burning was a painless thing. Not until I looked into a pair of sky blue eyes and realized that perhaps falling was a peaceful thing. I've never thought about what my favorite color was before because I hadn't seen one that was worthy of the title. Until now, that is. Blue, I say, my voice low. Oh God, he's looking into her eyes and he's like, blue is my favorite color. Guys. Real life guys, this is what you are in competition for. Chapter 29 from Payden's POV. While they're having their little cute moment and their dancing moment, suddenly someone comes and interrupts them. Finally something is happening. It's none other than Sadie. She's like, all I want is your bands and I'll be on my way. Like every single person is like, just give me your bands and I'll go away. Do you really think that they're going to just hand it over? Oh, take it. Like, why would you even ask it? And then they just fight over her and win over her. Nothing interesting. The entire chapter is filled with that. And then chapter 30 from Payden's POV. In the previous chapter, they actually kill Sadie and Kai actually buries Sadie. And he's like, no, I don't care about burying people, but I know how much it means for you, Payden, so I did it for you. That's sweet. And then actually Payden stole the leather strip from Kai. So Kai is like, just take the leather strip that will make you win, Payden, just take it. I don't know why he's offering, but he's offering apparently. And she's like, no, I don't want to take it. And he's like, just take the damn leather grey. And a smile twists my lips, say please. You have just been wanting to make me say this, haven't you? Dying to actually. The smile he gives me is equally as lazy as his grace travelling over my face. Please pay. Oh. That seems to be a foreign word to you, Prince. Thanks to you. I have a feeling I'm going to grow very familiar with it. You have the power to make me plead. I do have one condition though, he says. Of course he does. And what would that be? An arm wraps around my middle, carefully avoiding my wound while tugging me against a broad chest. I startle at the sudden contact and a soft laugh sounds close to my ear. I get to use you to keep me warm. What the hell, dude? You. And he's asking like, tell me, does this annoy you? And she's like, no, I don't want to get down in front of him. Not at all. I can't be bothered, as it. Good, he says coolly. Who needs a pillow when I have you? Sweet dreams, space, sweet dreams, Kai. Chapter 31 from Kai's POV. We spend our final day in the whispers trying to get out. So we have eventually reached the final day. Oh my god, I feel like nothing has happened. It's just been so boring. Except for those 2-3 fights which were also very boring. So that's when they find Andy and Jax coming towards them. And they're asking each other like, hey, what happened to you? What happened to you? And they're like, nothing much. They're also like, nothing much. It's just boring. We are so bored to death. Nothing has happened and whatnot. Like, hard relate. And then suddenly they come across the next contestant Ace, who is an illusionist, if you remember. So he kind of makes all of them see these illusions. Kai is seeing the illusions where Payden is getting killed and whatnot. And eventually he finds the illusionist and drives his knife into his chest. And then suddenly he realizes that the illusionist is transforming into some other person. And guess who? Jax. Not Jax, don't kill Jax, he's the only sweet person in the entire book. The illusion blows away in the soft breeze, sending tendrils of smoke into the morning sky. My bloody brother, Jax. Why? Just why? He is a literal child. He is 15-year-old, for God's sake. Chapter 32 from Kai's POV, he's like, no, what have I done? No, Jax should not die. Hey, look at me, Jax. Okay, buddy, you're going to be fine, alright. He's kind of comforting him and whatnot. He's like, I'm going to take care of you, anything. Not gonna lie, I thought Jax was going to die. Because I thought this is such a brutal trial. So many things are happening. Somebody has to die, right? Some important character has to die. But no, nothing happens to Jax. He gets better. Kai actually finds a healer in the crowd. Since this is the last day, all the people have gathered to look at the trials. So he catches a healer in the crowd. He projects those powers on himself and he heals Jax. And that's how the first trial has ended. Oh my god. Chapter 33 from Paden. It has been 3 days since the final fight at the Edge of Whispers, and there are only 7 of us left. And we got to see those sites who capture these moments and take photographs and videos. For the audience, all this entire trials is shown again. The highlights of the trials are shown again. And I kid you not, there are so many repetitions. Whatever has happened, the audience is seeing again. Like, why would you repeat everything again and again? I swear this book would just be half of what it actually is if not for those repetitions. And then after audience get to see all these things, we get to see Kit and Paden kind of having a moment. They're kind of bonding. This entire chapter is just Paden and Kit bonding and talking about their feelings and whatnot. Chapter 34 from Paden's POV. Okay, she is missing her home. So she's back to the loot. And then she goes to his house, to her previous house. That's why she actually meets Lenny and the entire resistance crew who attacked the guys in the ballroom, if you remember, are there. She's like, Lenny, what are you doing here? And then that's when she gets to know that Lenny is also part of the resistance. All the resistance are not just ordinaries. There are some part of them, few of them who have like weak powers. They were also banished. They're all fighting together now. They kind of give her a task to get them inside the palace. They are like, we are going through so many atrocities. So many crimes are being committed against us. We are literally being killed. So if you just give us access to the palace, just make friends with Kit or Kai, whoever, just give us access through tunnels to the palace and we will take care of the rest. And then we meet an important character in the resistance crew, Callum. He's a mind reader. Remember him, he actually becomes important in the upcoming books also. Chapter 35 from Kai's POV, he is talking about the training, the typical. And he finds Paden as usual. He's like, hey, do you want to have a match again? Do you want to fight with me? And she's like, you know what? Let's try something else. Let's do archery. So apparently Paden is really good at archery, but Kai not so much. So while they're like, let's have 3 rounds of archery, whoever wins the most is the winner. And then Paden is clearly hitting the bullseye every single time and Kai is almost losing and he's like, oh no, I'm going to lose. I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to distract her. If I'm going to lose, I might as well have some fun. I take a step towards her, then I slowly step behind her. Close behind her, my chest presses against her back. At the same moment, I let my hand lazily find her waist. She jumps at the sudden contact and I laugh softly, close to her ear. What are you doing? Her words are breathless, but she doesn't move, frozen against me. My lips are close to her ear as a murmur, distracting you. And she's like, I told you I don't get distracted, dude. Yes, my fingers begin tracing lazy circles up and down her side. And I could have sworn you tapped your left foot as you said it. I lean in even closer, whispering against her ear. And we both know that means you're lying. He's like clearly trying to touch her, distract her, keeping his arms around her and whatnot. And then now it's Kai's turn. He has to do the archery. What are you doing, Grey? Distracting. Now she is kind of trying to touch him to distract him. I smile. Darling, you're going to have to do better than that. No, she says coolly, I don't think I do. And her touch vanishes. And that's when it hits me. She's right. She doesn't need to do anything more to distract me. The mere thought of her being so close and barely touching me has my head spinning. He is so gone for her. He is a goner. You are a cruel little thing, you know that? My voice is deep desperate. But I've barely laid a finger on you, she says softly. Exactly. She's like, I didn't realize a single touch could affect you so much. Neither did I. She smiles at what she sees. You lost Azir. Next, chapter 36 from Payden's POV. We again get Kit and Pay bonding time. They're talking about each other. Pay is kind of like having mixed feelings. She wants to get access to the tunnel, so she wants to get close to Kit, but at the same time she's feeling guilty, like, oh, Kit is actually a nice person. I'm betraying him. He's going to be so mad at me when he gets to know about this. So the entire chapter is that. Trust me, nothing else is happening. The entire chapter is just that. Next, chapter 37, Payden. Yay, one more party. One more ball is going to happen. So she's going to this party. She comes across Kai. He's talking random gibberish and she's like, oh my god, Kai, you're drunk. So she accidentally stumbles upon him and like he spills drink on his shirt and she's like kind of opening his buttons to clean him or something. And he's like, are you undressing me, Grey? I mean, I can't say I didn't think this day would come. Couldn't resist me, darling. She's like, oh please, it's not. The only thing I'm resisting when I'm around you is the urge to put a dagger to your throat. I love when you threaten to kill me, do you know that? Oh, why is that? The corner of his mouth twitches up because every time you don't, it only proves that you don't want to. And then he flicks the tip of my nose with a satisfied smile. Shameless flirt! Well, maybe if you'd kept your eyes on the dance floor and your nose out of your glass, we wouldn't be in this situation. Oh darling, my eyes were on the dance floor. They were on you dancing with my brother. Why do you think I've been drinking? Jealous, Kai, jealousy. Okay, I see you. So he's kind of flirting with her, trying to touch her and all. And she's like, hey, you're drunk, let's not do this. But he's like, hey, you are touching me. And she's like, well, I am sober. And he's like, so you are saying I'm allowed to touch you when I'm sober? She's like, okay, I'm only saying yes because I doubt you will remember much of this conversation in the morning. Oh darling, I doubt I could ever forget this. And then she is like, oh my god, you are unbelievable dude, whatever. And she's laughing. He's like, don't stop, he murmurs. I nearly choke on my laugh. Stop what? That, laughing. Oh my god. So they go to the dance floor, they're dancing. My eyes wander to his stained shirt, visible to everyone around us. Kai, your shirt, maybe you should change. Darling, he cuts me off with a humored huff. I'm used to being covered in other red sticky liquids far worse than wine. Oh my god. Teenagers, guys, they're teenagers. Your smile, I cut him off before his offer can tempt me. I like when you truly smile, when you're not wearing the mask of the future enforcer or the prince, and you simply allow me to see you. It's a smile I wish you would share with me more often. She is like falling for him, even with my stupid dimples. You still like my smile. Even with your stupid dimples, Azir, she is falling for him. And then Malachi, the queen comes in. Do share her with other gentlemen, won't you? And then the queen goes away. She's like, your name is Malachi? That's what the full name for Kai. Malachi is such a cute name. I don't know why. It's so beautiful. She asked him, your name is Malachi? Yes, well, I have also been called devilishly handsome, devastatingly powerful, and more recently, a cocky bastard. You deserve it, dude. You totally deserve it. You're so full of yourself. Whoever called you that must know you quite well. Dimples. Those damn dimples. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And then Payden is like, she's so overwhelmed by the rush of feelings towards him. She doesn't know what to do. She's having a panic attack. And then he is kind of taking care of her. He takes her outside the dance floor. He kind of undresses her and he's there having this cute moment. Chapter 38 from Kai's POV. This entire chapter is just Kai and Kit having their usual banter, talking about their brotherhood. How like Kit just wants Kai, like, don't die on the trials. Kai is like, hey, duh, of course I'm not gonna die. Chapter 39 from Payden's POV. So in this ball, before the next trials could begin, they're like, let's just do a fight because the audience are not getting to see the trials in live. So we'll just do a fight here. Like, why? Like, these people are so deranged, I'm telling you. This entire chapter is filled with this boring fight between these contestants and nothing else is happening. Next, chapter 40 from Kai's POV. I woke up on the edge of a mountain, Plummet Mountain. I only know this because I have been here before with father, casually conquering more fears and such. But I'm not alone. Finally, something is happening. So the next stage of trials have begun apparently. So here they have been divided into teams. Welcome to trial number 2. We think a little teamwork is due. You have 12 hours to reach the top. To beat the other team, you must climb non-stop. So they are divided into teams. Blair, Braxton and Andy and Kai is in one team. So whichever teams reaches the top of the mountain first, those are the winners. And then they're like, are you kidding me? We barely like each other. How are we going to survive as a team? And then they come across snakes in their path. That's the only thing that happens in this entire chapter. Next, chapter 41 from Payden. Again, same like Payden, Jax and Ace, they are teamed up. They're like, why Ace just literally hates us? Why would you team up? Why would you pair us up with him? And then Payden is like, it's not awkward, it's intentional. Everything the king does is deliberate, twisted. That's why he has deliberately paired us up. And then Jax is like, speaking of Kai, I wonder how he's handling this. Handling what? The mountain. He hates height. Payden is like, but I watched him climb up so many things. Jax is like, yeah, Kai is pretty good at hiding what he feels. And he says like, the king made him climb the highest trees in the Whispers over and over again until he was convinced Kai had gotten over his fear. Why would you do that to your own child, making them relive their fear again and again and again? Like, you're a terrible father. And then just like the other team came across snakes, this team comes across a rock slide, but they survive eventually. Next, chapter 42 from Kai's POV. So, and then both the teams have come to the top of the mountain, and then there comes suddenly an announcement. The rules of the game have changed a bit. So the first to capture the flag will win it. So apparently there is a flag there, and then like whoever captures the flag is going to win. And then like chaos. We turn on one another, absolute chaos. Chapter 43, Payden. The same scene is getting repeated and then everyone is fighting, and then Kai and Payden are apparently the only people whose eyes are on the flag. Kai murmurs, go. He murmurs the word, now nodding towards the flag that will bring me victory. Win this damn thing, Grey. And I'm suddenly standing beneath it, looking up at my prize, looking up at my victory, and no one stopped me as I rip off the flag. So Payden has officially won the trials. Yay! Next, chapter 44 from Kai's POV. The second trials is over. The king is talking to Kai like, why didn't you win it? Why would you let the girl win it? And like, blah, blah, blah. I trained you for this, so you'll not disappoint me. Understood, enforcer? Understood, your majesty. He's your son, dude. And then chapter 45 from Payden's POV. Okay, so Payden is just having a stroll in the gardens and suddenly Kai comes. They are having like just normal conversation. She's like, tell me something that nobody knows about you. He's just taken aback by the question and he's just like, blueberries. I don't like them. I hate blueberries. Dude, what? Blueberries are tasty. Why don't you like blueberries? She asked about every single fruit. Like, how about oranges? He's like, I don't like pulp. How about bananas? I hate the texture. He's like, he hates every single fruit apparently. And then they're kind of talking. They kind of bantering and they decide to have a thumb fight. It's actually adorable, not gonna lie. And then chapter 46, Payden, they fall back into their old routine, like just training for the trials and everything, just the usual banter between Kai and Payden. Suddenly, Kit comes to Payden and he's like, I want to see the loot. The other day they were having the conversation and Payden tells him like, this is not your actual people. Actually, your actual people are in the loot who are suffering with hunger and poverty. You have to go and see them and take care of them. And now Kit is like, yes, I actually want to go to loot. Payden takes him and he's like, now I feel so guilty. I want to take care of my people and whatnot. And then Payden is like, oh no, I am betraying this dude. He's actually a nice person. Next, chapter 47 from Payden's POV. I'm gonna tell you there's literally nothing happening in this chapter. The Payden just has a conversation with Lenny. He's like, oh, did you get the key from Kit to the tunnels? And she's like, oh, I'll get it. Wait, that's it. So Kai is actually having a nightmare. He is actually dreaming of Payden getting hurt and he's like literally screaming. If you remember, Kai and Payden's rooms are side by side or in front of each other. And then Payden hears him scream and she gets to his room. Chapter 49, Payden screams. I've never heard agony in such a raw form. She's hearing Kai screaming and she's like, oh my god, what happened to you? You're just having a nightmare, Kai. Please just talk to me. And then he wakes up and he's like, stay. Please, he is actually asking her to stay with him and spend the night with him because he's so terrified of sleeping again because of the nightmares. And then she couldn't say no, she just stays with him and he is like, his breath catches, his gaze softens. He didn't think I would stay. He expects everyone to leave him. That's so sad actually. And then while they're sleeping, he's like touching her hair, braiding her, and she's like, what are you doing? He's like practicing. He's practicing braiding her hair. Oh my god. This boy. Chapter 50 from Kai's POV. I can't tear my eyes from her. I can't tear my eyes from her. I can't stay my thoughts from her. I can't pry my body from her. God. Boy. And then she wakes up. He kind of tries to get close to her and she resists a bit and he's like, oh no, whatever done. And then there is this party for the ball which is beginning and Kai looks at Payton and he's like, I've never seen something so beautiful, so bold, so blatantly wrong for me. She's a devil, she's a deity, she's a man's downfall in human form, she's my downfall. Then her eyes drift to Kit, the connection snaps. And I'm left feeling empty besides the jealousy growing inside of me. Why did I ever think I could have her, ever think she would have me? Because beasts don't get the beauty. But the beast does get the beauty though. What do you mean, dude? Chapter 51, Payton. I'm avoiding him. Not the best way to deal with a problem, I'll admit, but Kai is a very pressing problem. A very desirable distraction. So like both of them realize they have feeling towards each other, but they're afraid and scared to admit it. So they're kind of like avoiding each other, especially Payton. And then, so Payton is spending time with Kit. While dancing, she kind of slips into his pocket where he keeps the key to the tunnel and she just steals it. Done, that's done. And then she slips the key from Kit to Lenny also, who is the Imperial, who is the part of the resistance team. And then she comes across Kai. He's like, why are you avoiding me? And she's like, I wouldn't call it avoiding. He's like, then enlighten me. What would you call it, Grey? You seem preoccupied and I didn't want to interrupt. I think you are avoiding dancing with me because you can't handle being so close. Exactly that, sir. Please, I have no problem being close to you. Lies, liar. Is that right? His lips are against my ear, fingers laced with mine. Body pressed close. Then why do you push me away? Chapter 52, Payton. Payton is like, she's so overwhelmed by all these feelings and she just wants to go out for fresh air. But like the Imperial or the guard at the door is like, he's stopping her. No, I'm not allowed to let you go outside. And then Kai comes in. He's like, careful, she'll press that blade to your throat. I would know. Now let her go and open the door. His voice is like the steel of my dagger, cold and sharp. The Imperial only sputters. But sir, we have orders, the contestants are not to leave. And you now have new orders, so I suggest you open the damn door. Oh, he adds, and if you want to keep your job, your hand and your head, I suggest you release the little lady. The Imperial strides swiftly past Kai, but not before the prince's hand finds into his shirt and slams him against the wall. I lied, Kai mutters, close to the man's face. You'll be lucky if I let you keep your head, let alone your hand, for laying your finger on her. Touch her and you die vibes. And it's so cute. And then they're out into the gardens and Kai is like, are you okay? You seem very overwhelmed there, out back there. And she's like, okay, I feel much better now. It's fine. Good, he says quietly, because I'm going to get very, very close to you. I let out a slow breath when he takes a step towards me, then another and another. He's close enough now that I can feel the heat of his body, feel the heat that spreads through me when he gets too close. He steps even closer. Kai. What? I ask. He shrugs, a smile still spread across his face. I just love the sound of my name coming from your lips. Aww.
Aww.
I clear my throat that has suddenly become far too dry. Well, Kai isn't your real name now, he said. He's silent, nothing but a smile and a sudden intensity in his eyes, wanting me to say his name. Malachi. His eyes flutter shut, his sides fall back. Only you can make my name sound worth saying. Only you can make my name sound worth saying. Well, what would you like me to call you? Kai, Malachi. My voice sounds so breathy and I almost wish I could blame it on panic attack. Call me anything you like. I'll never pass up the chance to hear your voice, darling. Alright then, cocky bastard it is. And he's like, I meant what I said. I can't take my eyes off you. I can't take my mind off you. He's finally kind of confessing. And he's like, tell me, Payton, what do you want me to call you? And she's like, what do you want to call me? He's like, I want to call you mine. Guys, he's such a shameless flirt. I can't with him. I know you feel it too, he says quietly. Feel what? Feel alive. Feel on fire. Feel. And then suddenly he is kissing her. His lips meet mine barely. It's the whisper of a kiss. His hand is cupping my face, thumb stroking my cheekbone, and then nothing. He pulls back. He says, you promised that I could touch you when I was sober. He remembered, guys. But then he says, but I'm never sober around you, Pay. Never not drunk on every detail that is you. If I kiss you, really kiss you like how I wanted to. How I have waited to. Should I expect a dagger at my throat? I guess you will have to kiss me and find out. Chapter 53, Kai. She says, I'll guess you have to kiss me and find out. Oh, and I plan on doing just that. And I'll take my chances, and he kisses her. They are having this moment and suddenly someone interrupts them. Your Highness. I halt. Then a sigh against her lips, making her shudder. I pull back barely, just enough to look between her eyes and the mouth. I had every intention of lazily exploring. I hope whatever you have to say is worth losing your tongue over for interrupting us. It's the king, the imperial bloods. It's urgent. And it was not in fact urgent. And I'm in fact seriously contemplating carving out the imperial's tongue out of it. Okay, because the king has called in Kai and he's like, Kai, you're getting distracted of the girl and whatnot. You're like typical blah blah blah. And Kai is like, it's not urgent at all. Why did he have to ruin my moment and interrupt me like that? Chapter 44, Kai, for the third time we face what could be our final day. So this is like the final stage of the trials. It's a maze. So there is this maze-like situation. The maze is like kind of tricky. It's going to be shifted all the time. People may kind of get crushed and killed inside the maze. So this is the final trial for them. So they're like, in order to win this trial, you have to go to the center of the shifting maze. Not only do you have to be the first contestant to reach the middle, but you must also kill the person that awaits you there. That person there is deserving of this punishment. They have committed crimes against the kingdom and you will pay for them with their life. So apparently there is a traitor at the center of the maze who is tied there. So whoever reaches the center of the maze and kills that person, that's when they will win this. Chapter 55, Payden, we get the description of the maze. It's again the same repetition, that the maze is constantly shifting and whatnot. That's it, the entire chapter. Again, chapter 56, Kai, he describes the maze again from his POV. Oh god, I'm going to be so irritated right now. Chapter 57, Payden, she encounters Blair. She's kind of having a fight with the Blair, but then eventually she wins and she doesn't kill her or anything, but she reaches the center. Chapter 58, Kai. Kai is also like, he fights with some of the people and then he also reaches the center. That's the entire chapter. Next, chapter 59, Payden. I stagger forward, tripping into a run. I force myself faster, ignoring the protest of pain shooting up my foot. Just remember that Payden is at the center of the maze. She has reached there. Edina, this can't be right. This can't be happening. Her beautiful form is broken and bleeding. Her knees sink into the sand and her hands are tightly tied behind her back. Tears streak down her once glowing dark skin, now dull and drenched with blood. Oh my god. So the traitor that the king was talking about, who is at the center of the maze, is none other than our beautiful and innocent Edina. Oh god. He's so twisted, not even kidding. And then she runs to save Edina, but then suddenly bitchy Blair comes from the back and she throws a trunk she throws a trunk of a tree at Edina and she is dead on the spot. So Payden goes to Edina and Edina is like, see, I'm going to die anyways, but I've made a vest for you. It's in the palace. Just go and get the vest. You have to wear that vest for me. That's how I'm going to be in your memories. It's a very sad moment, not gonna lie. Next, chapter 60, Kai, he's looking at Payden, crying, utter anguish, utter agony, utter alone. This is what I hear in her cry. And then everyone is like, crowd is cheering because Blair has officially won the trials, but then suddenly entire atmosphere shifts. And that's when Payden and Kai notices that the resistance have taken over the entire crowd. They have like bunch of silencers who are silencing the powers of all the crowds. Chapter 61, Payden, she notices that the resistance has taken over. She doesn't know what to do, and that's when she locks eyes with Kit. And he's like, there's fire in his eyes, and that's when she knows, like, he knows that Payden is the one who betrays him, He knows that the Payden is the one who betrayed him and who made the resistance to come into the palace. And then Callum's voice is turned. People of Ilya, welcome us home. We are no threat. We are all ordinaries. And then suddenly Kai erupts in flames. Chapter 62, Kai. So basically everyone, all the elites are being silenced by these silencers from their resistance. But Kai is like, okay, wait. I am going to play some mind tricks here. I am going to beat the silencer with the silencer itself. So Kai takes the powers of silencers and he silences all the silencers. I hope you are understanding what I'm saying. So eventually Kai gets back his powers and then just utter chaos erupts. Everyone is fighting. Chapter 63, Paden. Paden is like, oh my god, what's happening? I just have to get away from here. She's like, I'm sorry, Edina, I won't be able to take your body. Edina's dead. She's just running away from the arena and she suddenly remembers the vest that Edina talked about. She goes back to the palace. She gets the vest and she's just coming out of the palace. That's when she comes across someone, the king, the none other than the king. So chapter 64, Kai is like, he's fighting, he's left and right beating everyone. He's like, at the same time, he is having his inner conflict also, like, oh my god, so many ordinaries are there. If what the healers and my father has said is true, then why are we still having so many powers with this? They have said that the ordinaries are going to diminish our powers, but I don't feel any diminished with so many ordinaries right beside me, and I feel so ill at fighting with these ordinaries with my power. So I'm just going to fight them with my normal strength without using any power. And then chapter 65, Paden, she and the king has a fight. The king apparently knows that Paden is an ordinary. Here we get to know that the king has actually murdered Paden. Paden is like, you have murdered my father, you are a murderer, I hate you for my life. I hate you with my life and whatnot. And king suddenly is like, see, that's what you got wrong. Here comes a plot twist. I am not the one who murdered your king. Let's say your encounter with future enforcer, aka Kai, is not... The first time is not in the loot. The first time is when your father died. Oh my god! We get to know that Kai is actually the one who killed Paden's father. And then the king is like, see, that was his first ever mission. He killed your father. He came back home and he cried for so many days. He was vomiting and he was so sick for many days. And the king is so sick. He's like, he literally, with his knife or dagger, he draws an O on her chest, O for ordinary. He's like, he was so sick in his mind. Chapter 6, Paden, she is fighting with the king and eventually she drives her dagger into the king's chest and he's dead. And that's when her eyes meet with some other eyes who's none other than our Kai. And she's like, oh my god, I killed his father, but he killed mine first. Then Kai comes and he throws his knife at Paden. His knife missed me. Kai doesn't miss, not unless he wants to. What have you done to me? He asks. My pretty pay, what have you done to me? Oh my god. How can a single moment mirror another in such a morbid way? Was it only yesterday that his lips formed those words with longing and today with loathing? Kai's voice trembles in his hands. I should bury this blade in your throat. Why can't I? She's like, then just do it. He is like, I will, I should, but I can't do it. Why can't I do it? He is like, you are my father's killer, but I don't know what to do. Just run away from me. I'm going to chase you. He's like, I'm going to give you a head start. Just run away, but I'm going to come behind you and I'm not going to let you go when I find you the next time. She bolts from there. She sprints. Chapter 67 from Kai's POV. He is like, how could I have been so blind, so oblivious? I'm watching her retreating form grow smaller, watching her escape a killer. She killed him, she killed the king, she killed my father, and yet I let her go, but not for long. And when I do, I will have found my courage. Oh my god. Chapter 68, Paden, she is like, I'm just running away from Kai as fast as I can. Thick hot liquids runs down my brain, my body, my very being. Honey, that's what I tell myself is just honey. Okay, that's the end of the chapters. We have our epilogue from Kit's POV. So Kit is like, it's been 3 days since I saw my father lying dead in the mud, 3 days since I last slept, 3 days since I could close my eyes, 3 days since the resistance attacked, 3 days since the girl I trusted, the girl I grew to want, became a murderer and a betrayer, 3 days since I became a king. So Kit is like full on PTSD mode. He is like, he doesn't know what to do. He is like all of a sudden this teenage boy has become a king and his father is dead. So he's like, he calls Kai, he's like, my enforcer, I am officially giving you your first mission. Just go find her. I want you to find her and I want you to bring her to me. Yes, your majesty. And then I sit down slowly. Bring me Paden Grey, enforcer. And that is the end, guys. Oh my god, it was a ride. How long is this video? Okay, more than 2 hours. Great. I'm going to have a great time editing this video. Wish me good luck. Okay, let me know in the comments below if you have read this book and what are all your favorite parts of the book. Do not forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye-bye. She fools other people and says that so quickly. And then we have our main lead. Kya is going to be future and the one from the PO. That's how they get the figure in there. And then we get to so she knows herself. His deep voice makes my night. What is it with? And then he talks about apparently she can multiple herself into multiple so he can. You looked like you needed saving, Kai says.